For weeks, the message coming out of Westminster felt unmistakable. The government was hinting at a difficult budget ahead, one where everyone must do their bit, one where hard choices were coming, and one where Rachel Reeves appeared to be laying the groundwork for a deeply unpopular and manifesto-breaking decision: raising income tax. Journalists picked up on clues. MPs whispered about it in corridors. Economists started running the numbers, and millions of working people braced themselves. But then, a sudden shift, a dramatic reversal, a U-turn that no one saw coming, not after all the signals had been sent. According to new reports, the Chancellor has now decided to abandon plans to raise income tax rates, despite weeks of briefings that such a move might be necessary to plug a huge £30 billion hole in the public finances. According to The Guardian, Rachel Reeves is set to abandon a plan to raise income tax in her budget, with the Chancellor reportedly ripping up the main measure in the wake of turmoil in the party. A source told The Guardian that plans to break the manifesto pledge on income tax had been ditched by the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Chancellor. It comes after a week of extraordinary briefing wars in the party, as allies of the Prime Minister suggest he would fight any leadership challenge, with some pointing to the Health Secretary Wes Streeting as a potential challenger, which he publicly denied. The bombshell tax U-turn, first reported by the Financial Times, was sent to the Office for Budget Responsibility on Wednesday. Downing Street did not deny the reports, but said it would not comment on budget matters. The hole hasn't disappeared, the pressures haven't eased, and the political stakes couldn't be higher. The question is now simple. If income tax is off the table, where is the money going to come from? To understand why this U-turn matters, we have to look back at the last few weeks, a period that has been chaotic even by the standards of modern British politics. Rachel Reeves held an unusual press conference on Tuesday, the 4th November 2025. It felt like a moment designed to test the waters. She ruled out large-scale borrowing. She ruled out major spending cuts. She ruled out the easy roads. And then came the line, "We must all do our bit." For a government facing a fiscal black hole of tens of billions, that sentence sounded like a warning, or a preparation. A signal that tax rises were coming and that working people would be asked to shoulder the load. What followed next only deepened that impression. Behind the scenes, Reeves and Treasury officials were reportedly trying to get MPs on side. Tea room conversations, quiet briefing, attempts to convince their own backbenchers that this was not only necessary but unavoidable. The government, already under pressure from internal leaks, fears of instability, and talk of a leadership challenge, was trying to steady the ship while preparing Parliament for tough medicine. Even Labour MPs were openly admitting that the party might have to break its manifesto promise and raise income tax. This clip, for example, Chris Curtis, the Labour MP for Milton Keynes North, said just days ago that he believed the government was heading toward breaking its manifesto commitment and increasing income tax.
No, they didn't have to make those commitments at all. I doubt it moved the dial in the slightest.
So are you frustrated that this has now become this enormous political issue because she's going to have to break the manifesto?
We probably are going to have to make the manifesto commitments. We shouldn't have made those commitments, but look, we are where we are, and where we are is probably going to have to raise taxes, probably income tax in the budget, but we're going to have to do the right thing, and we're going to have to make sure we build up enough fiscal headroom so that people know that this is the last time and the last budget that we have to make difficult decisions, and we need to continue all of the work to ensure that we get the British economy.
The clearest sign of how far this expectation had spread was the fact that it wasn't only analysts and commentators reading the signals, but people inside Labour itself were preparing for the same outcome. Conversations among MPs reflected a genuine belief that the government was moving toward a position where the manifesto pledge would have to be broken. The Labour government fought its election campaign on a promise, a very clear, very public promise, not to raise taxes on working people. They worked hard at fighting the long-standing narrative that Labour is the tax and spend party, the party that will inevitably raise taxes, was something Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves were actually aware of, and they worked tirelessly to dismantle it. That's why, in their manifesto, Labour went out of its way to make a clear and empathetic pledge on page 21. Labour will not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. Those three taxes, income tax, national insurance and VAT, make up around 75% of all government revenue. Breaking that promise so soon after taking office would have been a political disaster. After a week of party infighting, negative headlines, and growing questions about the Prime Minister's authority, the Labour leadership appears to have concluded that they simply cannot afford another fight. There is another crucial reason this U-turn matters. Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer simply do not have the political capital to withstand the backlash that would come from breaking their manifesto. The Labour government is entering the budget not from a position of strength, but from one of deep vulnerability. Starmer's approval ratings are already collapsing. In some national polls, Labour has fallen to third, even fourth place, and this is before the budget has even been delivered. These concerns have intensified following new polling from More in Common, taken between 31st of October and 3rd of November 2025, which tracks public opinion as Labour begins its time in government. The poll shows Reform UK in first place with 31%, the Conservatives in second at 19%, and Labour falling into third with just 18% support. For a government party, this is a serious warning sign. Labour has only been in government for 16 months, meaning this level of disillusionment is happening far earlier than anyone expected. When Labour won the election, they promised stability, competence, and an end to years of political chaos. Their message was that the country could trust them to manage things better than the Conservatives, who they argued had ruined the country. But if Labour is now polling below the Conservatives, that narrative collapses. It means the public isn't just frustrated, they are already losing confidence in the government's direction. Falling to third place doesn't simply indicate dissatisfaction, it suggests that the public no longer believes Labour is delivering the change it promised, and that disillusionment is spreading quickly. In September this year, an Ipsos poll labelled Keir Starmer as the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. The media response at the time was brutal. Headlines across major outlets highlighted just how sharply his approval had collapsed. For example, CNN ran a headline that captured the mood perfectly. Keir Starmer is polling as the UK's most unpopular Prime Minister on record. A year ago, Keir Starmer's Labour Party won the largest majority in Parliament this century and consigned the Conservatives, Labour's historic rival, to its worst defeat. Now, after 15 months in power, Starmer has become the most unpopular British Prime Minister on record. Although previous leaders have joined despised foreign wars, bungled responses to pandemics and nearly sent the economy into meltdown, none have been as unpopular as Starmer. According to Ipsos, a leading pollster, just 13% of voters say they are satisfied with Starmer, while 79% are unsatisfied. Labour has suffered the worst ever fall in support for a newly elected government, said John Curtis, the doyen of polling in Britain. But he is not surprised. Thanks to Britain's electoral system, Labour won about 2/3 of seats with just 1/3 of the votes cast. Accounting for low turnout, Curtis said that just 1 in 5 Britons voted for Starmer's Labour Party. As landslides go, Starmer's was loveless. The past week has only made matters worse. The internal briefing wars, rumours of a leadership challenge, and the swirl of speculation around Wes Streeting have exposed a party that appears divided, anxious, and chaotic at the very moment it needed unity. News outlets across the political spectrum are now describing Keir Starmer as the most unpopular Prime Minister since modern polling records began, a devastating label for a leader just months into office. With the government already fighting on multiple fronts, the last thing that they could afford was another self-inflicted crisis, and that is exactly what breaking the manifesto pledge on income tax would have been. They were elected on a promise: we will not raise taxes on working people. If they break that now, the political fallout would be explosive. It would hand their critics the perfect attack line: they lied before even getting started. The optics alone could have sparked serious unrest among Labour MPs, many of whom have already expressed concern about voter reaction. They know how hard it is to knock on doors during tough economic times. They know how fragile public trust can be, and they know that raising income tax, especially when households are already under pressure, would be difficult to defend. But the decision not to raise income tax doesn't make the original problem disappear. The government still has a £20 to £30 billion hole to fill. If income tax is no longer an option, then the next question becomes unavoidable. What comes next? Well, first, the markets have already reacted. The cost of government borrowing surged higher after it was reported Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have abandoned plans to raise income tax in the budget. The yield on a 10-year UK gilts, a benchmark for the cost of servicing the national debt, climbed by 13 base points at the start of trading on bond markets to 4.57%. It was the steepest jump in yield since July, when bond markets were sent into turmoil by Chancellor's tearful appearance in the Commons that raised speculation she was about to be sacked. Borrowing costs had fallen in recent weeks after Ms Reeves laid the groundwork for tax rises, saying that she was prepared to take tough choices in the budget. The question now is simple. How will Reeves raise the money if she's no longer willing to break the manifesto and raise income tax? The Financial Times suggested that another option would be to reduce income tax thresholds while keeping tax rates unchanged, which could raise billions of pounds for the Treasury. From a non-partisan perspective, it is concerning that with less than 2 weeks until the budget, the Treasury still appears uncertain about its financial decisions. At this stage, the major fiscal choices should already be settled, costed and sent to the OBR, not debated, rewritten or reconsidered. When a government is still weighing fundamental options this close to budget day, it signals a level of instability that would raise questions under any administration. And while political commentators differ in their interpretations, the sudden U-turn, last-minute recalculations and shifting internal briefings all suggest a degree of panic inside government as they try to piece together a plan that is economically credible and politically survivable. In the end, this U-turn leaves the country with more questions than answers. The government has backed away from raising income tax, but the fiscal gap remains as large as ever, and the clock is ticking. Markets are nervous, MPs are restless, and public confidence is fragile. With polling collapsing, infighting intensifying, and the budget rapidly approaching, Rachel Reeves now faces one of the toughest tests for any modern chancellor, delivering a plan that is credible, fair, and politically survivable. The next 2 weeks will reveal whether this government can steady itself or whether the turmoil is only just beginning.